My father sold our biotech company for $2 billion, fired me in the same meeting, and handed my life's work to my brother before the ink was even dry. The boardroom went silent when my mother slid the termination folder across the glass table. "We're giving the future to Leo," Dad said. "You're done." I looked at the buyer, then at the screen showing the number they thought made them untouchable. "So you sold my code." Mom smiled like I was embarrassing myself. "We sold our business." Then the buyer closed his laptop and said, "Actually, that's exactly why we can't close." VanceBio did not begin with a ribbon cutting or a venture capital breakfast. It began on a folding desk in my Cambridge apartment, between a cracked coffee mug, a rented microscope, and a laptop that sounded like it was begging for mercy. I was 27, broke enough to count grocery items before reaching the register, and awake enough to see patterns no one else had noticed yet. Rare disease data does not announce itself, it hides. In lab values, in missed markers, in patients who spend years being told their symptoms do not fit cleanly into a diagnosis. I built the first version of the platform because I hated that silence. My father knew how to talk about science. I knew how to make it work. That was the bargain no one said out loud. He became the face. I became the engine. Investors loved him. He could stand in a hotel ballroom with a blue tie and a perfect pause, then make uncertainty sound like destiny. My mother sat beside him with clean spreadsheets, polished language, and a smile that made every number look intentional. Then there was Leo. My brother could not explain model drift if his life depended on it, but he could say market expansion with both hands in his pockets and make people nod. My parents called him strategic. They called me intense. When we incorporated VanceBio, my mentor, Dr. Marin Ellis, made me slow down. Family is not a contract. She told me, so write one. She sat across from me in a coffee shop near Kendall Square while rain streaked the window and made me document everything. The original code, the repository timestamps, the lab notebooks, the founder contribution license that let the company use my pre-company platform without pretending it had been born in a boardroom. At the time, I felt guilty for needing paper between me and my own parents, years later. That guilt would look like instinct. As the company grew, my name moved farther from the stage. Leo appeared in press photos. Dad gave keynote speeches. Mom corrected investor decks until every slide made leadership look clean and family-shaped. I stayed in the lab, server heat on my face, freezer alarms in the background, coffee going cold beside patient data I was trusted to protect. By the time Helixer Pharma entered the picture, VanceBio was worth a headline number I could barely say out loud, $2 billion. And somehow, I was the only person in my family still acting like the science mattered. The first warning came from a chair. Not a contract, not an email, a chair. Helixer hosted a private investor dinner at a hotel near the harbor, all low light, white plates, and glasses that chimed every time someone laughed too hard. I arrived late from the lab with my hair still damp from the emergency eye wash station after a reagent spilled down the hall. At the main table, every seat had a name card: Richard Vance, Celia Vance, Leo Vance, Helixer executives, board members. Mine sat near the wall beside the catering door. Leo was already standing beside Dad, telling Adrian Cole that he had guided the platform from concept to acquisition. My father smiled like the sentence belonged in a museum. My mother saw me hear it and crossed the room before I could speak. "Not tonight," she said softly. He didn't build the platform. Her smile never moved. Tonight is about confidence. That became the new rule. Confidence meant Leo answered questions he did not understand. Confidence meant I was told to simplify, soften, step back. Confidence meant my name got smaller in every deck while his title got longer. During one technical diligence call, Helixer asked about validation drift across rare disease cohorts. Leo leaned forward and said something so wrong, Nina Brooks dropped her pen. I corrected him. Dad muted the call. "You embarrassed your brother. He embarrassed the data." The next morning, a memo appeared in my inbox. Retention and transition planning. My role would shift after closing. Advisory capacity. Limited operational authority. Clean leadership alignment. Clean. That was the word they used when they were washing me out. Then Martin Keller, our general counsel, accidentally copied me on a chain he should not have. Need confirmatory consent from EV. Before change of control if pre-company license remains active. I read it 3 times. The room around me went quiet, even with the servers running behind the glass. They knew. They knew the original platform had not been handed over like family silver. They knew Dr. Marin had made me keep the license clean. They knew the buyer needed a chain of title that could survive lawyers, regulators, and time. That night, I opened my black notebook and ran my fingers over the first page. The first model sketch, the first timestamp, the first proof. For years, I thought they were trying to push me off stage. Now I understood. They were trying to rewrite who built the stage. Priya Shah's office was above a bookstore that smelled like dust, coffee, and old paper. No glass walls, no assistant with a headset, no view of Boston Harbor. Just 2 chairs, a narrow desk, and a woman who read contracts like they were crime scenes. I placed the black notebook in front of her, then the license agreement, then the board minutes, then the email Dr. Marin Ellis sent me 7 years ago, the one with a single line at the top. Protect the work before you protect their feelings. Priya did not comfort me. I liked that. She took off her glasses, rubbed one thumb along the bridge of her nose, and said, "You did not assign the original engine outright. No, you licensed it. Yes, with change of control conditions." I nodded, and scientific integrity oversight. My throat tightened. That part was Marin. Priya leaned back. Then they cannot sell this as clean. Fully transferable corporate property while firing the person who controls the license conditions. I stared at the window behind her. Rain moved down the glass in thin lines. "So I can stop them." "You can stop a lie," she said. Not the company, not the patients, not the research. That mattered. Because I knew what people would say if this went wrong. Bitter daughter ruins family deal. Difficult woman destroys biotech breakthrough. Technical founder cannot let go. Priya slid a legal pad toward herself. "We notify buyer's counsel. We preserve the record. You do not delete code. You do not lock servers. You do not touch patient data. You do not sign anything in that boardroom without review." The simplicity steadied me. Nina called that night from the lab freezer room. I could hear the low, mechanical hum behind her. "They're drafting the press release," she said. "Leo is listed as platform architect." I closed my eyes. Send me the language. Already did. By midnight. Priya had sent formal notice to Martin Keller and Helixor's counsel, chain of title, license scope, model validation records, scientific oversight. All of it had to be disclosed before signing. My father called 17 minutes later. "You're threatening your own family." I looked at the black notebook on my desk. "No," I said. "I'm correcting the data. On signing morning." They called me into the boardroom, not to ask, to erase. They just did not know I had already been entered into the record. The boardroom had been cleaned for a photograph. That was my first thought. The glass table had no fingerprints. The water bottles faced the same direction. Even the pens looked staged, lined beside thick folders with color-coded tabs. Outside the windows, Boston sat under a flat gray sky, all steel and cold water, while inside the room my family arranged themselves like they had already won. Dad stood at the head of the table. Mom sat to his right with a folder in front of her hands. Leo sat beside her in a navy suit I had never seen before, his new title already shining on the temporary badge clipped to his pocket. Across from them, Helixor's team watched quietly. Adrian Cole sat in the middle, laptop open, one hand resting beside a legal pad. He did not smile. He had never needed to. The screen behind Dad showed both company logos and the number everyone kept pretending was simple. $2 billion. A headline value. Upfront cash, stock, milestones, earnouts. Not a mountain of money dumped on the table, but still enough to make people forget who had built what. Dad cleared his throat. "Today," he said, "we secure the future of VanceBio." Leo nodded like the future had been waiting for him personally. I stayed standing near the last chair. No one had pulled it out for me. Mom finally slid the folder across the table. It stopped in front of me with a soft scrape. I looked down. Severance terms. Non-disparagement. NDA. A paragraph saying I was stepping down to pursue other opportunities. I almost laughed. Other opportunities. As if I had wandered away from my own bloodstream. Dad folded his hands. The integration team needs clean leadership. Clean, I said. His eyes sharpened. Mom used her soft voice. The one she used when investors were nervous or when she wanted to make a knife feel like a napkin. This is not personal, Emma. This is governance. Leo leaned back. You'll be fine. Technical founders transition out all the time. I looked at him. Technical founders usually know they're transitioning. He glanced at Dad. Dad's jaw tightened. We're handing over the future to Leo. He'll lead strategy with Helixir. You are no longer aligned with the company's direction. The room did not move. Even the air system sounded quieter. I placed one hand on the folder but did not open it. So you sold my code, I said. Mom gave a small, embarrassed chuckle, like I had spoken too loudly at dinner. We sold our business. Leo smiled then. Not wide. Just enough. Emma, he said, no one buys a company because of one person's laptop. Adrian Cole closed his. The sound was small. It cut the room in half. Actually, he said, that is exactly where we need to stop. Dad turned toward him with a controlled smile. Adrian, we've been through diligence, not clean diligence. Mom's fingers tightened around her pen. Adrian looked to Helixir's counsel, a woman with silver glasses and a stack of marked documents. She opened the top folder. Our valuation depends on full transferability of the platform, she said. That includes the core engine rights, the model governance framework, validation history, and key scientific oversight. Dad's smile thinned. The platform belongs to VanceBio. Priya's voice came from the doorway. Parts of the platform belong to VanceBio, she said. The part your debt calls fully transferable is licensed under conditions. Everyone turned. Priya walked in with Martin Keller behind her. Martin looked like he had not slept. He carried a folder against his chest like a shield that had already failed. Dad stared at him. Martin did not answer. Priya placed copies on the table. Founder contribution license, board minutes, repository timestamps, correspondence from Dr. Marin Ellis, and your own general counsel's warning about change of control consent. Mom's face went smooth. That was how I knew she was scared. Dad's voice dropped. This is a family company. Priya looked at him. Then the records should be especially clear. Adrian turned one page. They aren't. The board members began shifting in their seats. Elaine Porter, who had barely spoken all morning, picked up the board minutes and read silently. Leo sat forward. This is ridiculous. I can hire engineers. Adrian looked at him for the first time. You couldn't answer our validation drift questions last week. Leo flushed. That was a technical detail. No, Adrian said. That was the platform. Nina appeared on the conference screen from the lab. Her hair pulled back, safety glasses pushed up on her head. Someone from Helixir had asked her to join. She looked nervous, but her voice held. Engineers can maintain code, she said. They can't recreate the validation logic without understanding why decisions were made. The biomarker ranking, the exclusion thresholds, the model retraining boundaries. That came from Emma's architecture. If she is removed from oversight during transition, the scientific risk increases. Mom spoke quickly. Emma has always been territorial with the science. Adrian did not look at her. Scientific control is not emotional when the valuation depends on validated science. Dad's palm hit the table. Water shook in one bottle. You are letting her hold a $2 billion acquisition hostage. I finally sat down. Slowly. No, I said. I am stopping you from selling a lie attached to it. Leo laughed under his breath. There it is. You always wanted to be the victim. I looked at him across the glass table, past the folders, the water bottles, the number glowing behind my father's shoulder. No, I said. I wanted to be named correctly. Elaine set down the board minutes. "Richard," she said, "did you represent to Helixor that Leo was the platform architect?" Dad did not answer right away. Mom stepped in. It was simplified language for investor communication. Priya lifted the press draft. "It says he guided the platform from concept to acquisition." Nina's face on the screen went still. Martin cleared his throat. "I advised that language be corrected." Dad turned on him. "You advised a lot of things. And you ignored them," Martin said quietly. That was the moment the room stopped belonging to my father. Not all at once, not dramatically. It moved away from him inch by inch. Adrian stood. "Helixor is prepared to proceed only under revised terms." Leo's head snapped up. Adrian continued. "A portion of seller proceeds will remain in escrow pending resolution of disclosure issues. Leadership integration changes. Richard, your CEO transition shortens. Celia, you will not sit on the Finance Integration Committee. Leo will not receive platform authority." Leo stood. "You can't just cut me out." Adrian looked at him. "We are not cutting out an asset." The silence after that was brutal. Then Adrian turned to me. "Dr. Vance will be offered Chief Scientific Officer, Head of Platform Integrity, with authority over scientific governance during transition. Public materials will identify her as founder and original platform architect." My mother stared at the table. My father looked at me like I had betrayed him by existing in writing. "You'd do this to your own family?" he asked. I touched the edge of the termination folder. For years, that question had worked on me. It had made me smaller in investor rooms, quieter at family dinners, careful with my own name. Not anymore. "I built this for patients who waited years for answers," I said. "I'm not destroying it. I'm protecting it from you." No one reached for the severance folder. No one asked me to sign. I took off my old badge and placed it on top of the unsigned papers. For 1 second, Leo looked relieved, like he thought I was leaving. Then I looked at Adrian. "I'll need a new title before I go back to the lab." The deal did not collapse. That would have made a cleaner story. Instead, it changed shape. Helixor still bought VanceBio under the same headline number, but the money no longer moved like my parents expected. A portion of the seller proceeds went into escrow. Certain milestones became tied to platform validation and scientific continuity. Every public document had to be corrected before closing. Richard Vance stepped down sooner than he planned. Celia lost her seat on the Finance Integration Committee. Leo's new badge never arrived. People called it restructuring, governance, risk mitigation. I called it the first honest paperwork my family had ever signed. I went back to the lab that afternoon. The server room still hummed behind the glass. The freezer alarm chirped once, then settled. A model run from the night before was still processing. As if the company had simply kept breathing while everyone upstairs fought over its name. Nina had left a sticky note on my monitor, "Platform still alive, for the first time all day." I smiled. "Not because they lost, because the work survived." Helixor sent my new badge 2 days later, Dr. Emma Vance, Chief Scientific Officer, Head of Platform Integrity. I kept the black notebook in my desk drawer, beside the corrected IP schedule, not as a weapon, as a birth certificate. The final press release was only 3 sentences longer than the draft my mother had approved, but one line changed everything. Founded on the original platform architecture developed by Dr. Emma Vance. No apology, no tears. No family meeting, just my name, printed where they could no longer erase it. At sunrise, I walked into the lab before anyone else arrived. Boston was still dark beyond the windows. The monitors glowed softly. My old termination folder sat in the shred bin with other drafts that no longer mattered. On my desk were 3 things: the black notebook, the corrected IP schedule, my new badge. I did not save the company by burning it down. I saved it by making the truth impossible to sell without me. A family can sell a business. They cannot sell the person who built it. If they ever tried to erase your work, tell your story below. Subscribe for the next one.